Sounds, sounds like somebody's resisting going back to in person.
I know. Great. Well, I'd like to go ahead and get started because really I want to provide opportunity for our partners that are on the call to have time in the breakout rooms for everybody to touch base and talk and kind of learn about some of the work that they're doing. So just a really brief housekeeping items. So for my portion of the presentation, we'll just kind of keep people muted, then we'll move everybody into the breakout sessions. If you do have any questions, go ahead and utilize that chat box. And if there's any questions that come through, please let me know. And then as usual, we are recording this, so we will be posting it up online. We also will be recording the breakout session. So for those, everybody's been pre-assigned to the breakout session that they selected at the time of registration. But if there is stuff that you were interested in learning about in the other sessions, know that that will be recorded. It is the first time that we're running 3 simultaneous breakout sessions together. So we're fingers crossed there's no technical difficulties, and that it all gets recorded. So just as far as an agenda for today's meeting, I will be providing some programming updates and just a primer about working with CBOs based on some of my experience. Then we'll be running into the 3 concurrent breakout sessions, and then we'll regroup everybody for some closing remarks. As I was just mentioning, as far as the breakout room logistics, everybody who selected to be in a particular group has already been pre-assigned. So at the time that we open up the breakout sessions, you will be moved into that breakout room. If you did not pick a session to be a part of, please let me know, and I will be in the main room helping to navigate and put people in the correct breakout rooms. We will also have a team member that will be present in each session. So Muriel, who many of you have met, she'll be partnering with she'll be in the food security session with Nourish California. Then Dr. Summeray will be in the school wellness session with the Alliance for a Healthier Generation. And then Mike Miller will be with the folks with Park Access and the Children in Nature's Network. So before I jump in, I just want to provide some programming updates. Next week, we will have the second session for our Persuasive Narrative series. I do need to update that. We actually have decided to add 30 minutes to that session just to allow for some additional time for connectivity and for interaction with the fellows. That session will be recorded. So I know for some individuals, fellows that are on the call, being a part of a 90-minute session may be a little bit challenging. So that session will be recorded. I also wanted to highlight the upcoming Chamber Provider Fellowship Mini College. Again, this is open to fellows from cohort 1 all the way through cohort 4, as well as the local health department representatives. We will be having work in progress sessions. We'll be hosting a workshop that will be on resilience, and I think that'll be something that everyone will be interested in, given kind of the year that we're all emerging out of and still in the thick of. And then we'll also be doing media training, but specifically we'll be doing something around social media and social media as an advocacy tool, which I know is something that we haven't addressed in some of the prior trainings. And then we also will be having our third and final session of the Persuasive Narrative series on the April 27th. All of the events, upcoming events, are on the Champion Provider Fellowship website through June. There's a couple events in August and September that will be getting added shortly. So with that, I wanted to jump into the today's discussion. So just a little bit of background about me. I am the project manager for the Champion Provider Fellowship, and I've been with the program for almost 6 years now, coming up in April. Prior to working at UCSF, I worked a lot in the nonprofit sector, working with many large-scale health-oriented organizations. I've also had an opportunity to work within the school setting partnering with organizations to bring services into the school setting. One of the more formative experience that I've had has also been working at a smaller nonprofit, working on a large scale community engagement event that brought in over about 3,500 youth from LA, Southern California area. And really what I want to kind of talk about today is some of the things that I've learned through my process of doing community engagement with community-based organizations. And it really comes not only from the experience, but also some of the challenges that I've encountered and some of the missteps that I made that try to inform my work moving forward. And so really, I think one of the things that we've done up until this point, and that's been really important for the model that we have for the Champion for Better Fellowship, is creating that linkage between fellows and local health departments. But it's also important to note that when we think about social change, creating, more systemic change, there's a lot of different players that need to be involved in those efforts. So this is just a highlight that when we think about chronic disease prevention, obesity prevention, it's a really complicated model. This is kind of looking at a systems perspective of, the obesity epidemic, and there's a lot of different players at play and a lot of different sectors. And it's just important to point out that real change cannot be driven by one sector, one individual. It's really a collective coming together to move forward change. So I like to think that there is a whole ecosystem of community partners. This is a little bit adapted from the collective impact model that I will not get into today, but it kind of formulates how I think about creating community change. And the idea that complex issues like obesity, chronic disease prevention, dental disease, they're multifactorial and they're very predisposed to collective impact, in so much that in order to create true change, we need to engage multiple players. And so right here, I just wanted to highlight, when we think about who makes up this whole ecosystem of community-based organizations, or what are we thinking about when we're thinking who are community-based organizations, we usually like to think of them as nonprofit organizations really dedicated to bettering the quality of life in the community that they serve. Many of these organizations work to support very vulnerable or marginalized communities that may be left out in some of the work that's being done on a larger scale. And quite frankly, for many of you all that are on the call, especially those that are working in health and dental, you may have already started to engage in some of these organizations, as sometimes they're part of the continuity of care, addressing some of your patients' social needs. So you may be engaging with them when there's issues of housing security that come up, and so forth. So while partnering with community-based organizations is definitely important in the work that we're striving to do, I wanted to lead off with just the challenges and then make the case for the value and why we should continue to invest in this work. First of all, one of the things that you often encounter is that there's sometimes issues with organizational capacity. Community-based organizations can range in size. They can range in not only from a staffing perspective, but the funding that's available. And sometimes organizational capacity will really impact your ability to kind of operationalize an idea at that given moment, just because the community-based organization may not be primed for that type of engagement, just because of capacity issues. Another important thing to consider is priority alignment. Some of the work that we did recently, I was working with the Latinx Center of Excellence here at UCSF, and we were interested in engaging more with the community in some of the work that we were doing. And, working in the Division of General Internal Medicine, we recognize issues of chronic disease, diabetes as very important issues to address, and we're hoping to engage the community around some of those issues. However, when we went to go speak with one of the community-based organizations, that's been a long-standing kind of a partner in the community, what we quickly realized that when they were thinking about issues related to health and health of their community, what they were most acutely interested at that time was how housing and displacement was impacting issues related to health for their community members. So they're obviously, while we were both very interested in supporting the health of the community at that time, kind of how our vision of creating a healthier community wasn't exactly on the same page, but it was just something to work through and acknowledge and understand that sometimes if you don't, you have to make space for appreciating that if you don't address things that are of more immediate concerns for the community, some of the other things are just going to be a non-starter. And I think also understanding and adapting to a new organizational culture. Some of the things that I've supported young professionals in the past joining the boards of nonprofit organizations. And one of the things that they were most struck by is just understanding kind of the differences and how maybe they operate in their business sector compared to a way that a nonprofit organization operates. And so I think just understanding how decisions are made is sometimes very eye-opening. You may think that you left a conversation speaking with the person that is, in the space or is able to make the final decisions, but only come to realize that actually there's a whole other protocol in place for really driving that decision making. So sometimes that's just something you have to learn how to adapt and understand. And sometimes it can be challenging. And then finally, partnering with community-based organizations, if you're going to do true, authentic community engagement, true partnership, it's just a time investment. And so I think that's something you have to understand when you're looking to how are you going to engage with community. There needs to be consideration of that upfront investment for time and trust building. But there is incredible value to partnership. And for those that were part of the onboarding training that we had back on March 4th with Dr. Seligman, some of these things may be echoed from what she said. So one of the great things about partnering with community-based organizations is their opportunity for resource sharing and just resources in general. Some of these organizations, and I'm sure as you'll hear from our speakers later, they create incredible resources that actually may be targeted towards communities that you may not engage with. For instance, an organization may be, because they're interfacing more so with policymakers or key decision makers, they may be creating unique resources that are tailored towards that audience. And that's something that you as Champion Provider Fellows can really tap into, since one of the things that you all will be focusing on is how to engage key decision makers in moving forward policy system environmental change. Another value of partnership is just problem identification and insight. As I kind of mentioned earlier with my previous example, we came into a discussion thinking about how the rising rates of diabetes and chronic disease were just very important and top of mind issues. But obviously that came from a bias from the place where we stood in this in the healthcare sector. And as we started to talk and engage in more discussions with community-based organizations, there are obviously different issues that started to arise. And also there's just a great discovery opportunity and an opportunity to gain insight about what is it that's actually going to work with within this community and understand how what the channels of communication are. So there's great insight that can be gained when you're thinking about rolling out different change interventions. Many community-based organizations also engage in their own data collection processes. So that's something else that can be super important to be able to share. Communication, sometimes they have the ability to penetrate different sectors of society, different sectors of community that may be left out of other communications that you all are doing. So they may be able to really harness and get to more vulnerable populations that sometimes may be left out or may be harder to connect with. So I think that's another important thing to recognize. They just have incredible partners that by engaging with them, there's opportunity to grow your network and identify other partners to bring to the table. Many of them also have funding set aside specifically for advocacy work. So I know with local health departments, obviously engaging in lobbying efforts is something that due to the nature of their funding, they're unable to do. But with many community-based organizations, they may actually have funding set aside specifically for advocacy lobbying activities. And so there's great opportunity to engage with them and get a better idea of what are some of the policy landscape and how to kind of plug into some of their efforts in a way that you wouldn't necessarily be able to do with the local health department. Again, partnership is important for amplifying your efforts. When we come together, we can really kind of move things forward and create increased awareness. It's one thing if one organization's talking about something, but if there's a coalition of organizations that is talking about it, that really has the opportunity for great awareness raising. And then also credibility is important, you know, especially if you haven't necessarily been engaged with the community before. It's important to, you know, it's in some respects it can be kind of like a stamp of approval if you're able to partner with an organization. It kind of can show because they probably have a lot of respect within the community that they serve. It kind of shows that you know, you've kind of taken the time to engender yourself into that organization, and it's important for from a credibility perspective. So just well, I have a couple more minutes left. I just wanted to jump into some partnership building considerations. I think it's important to understand the CBO landscape. And so this really comes with doing some upfront investment and work kind of, and I think this is where local health departments and even perhaps some of the institutions in which you all work with, majority of them probably have some relationships with community-based organizations. And so they can probably help you to identify who those organizations might be that are working in the community on certain issues and start to get your feet wet and kind of familiar with who are the players, et cetera. It's also important to understand past partnership history. While we like to think that we were entering into a partnership, you know, as a single individual, just with, you know, interest in supporting change in a specific area, sometimes you're not just coming in there as a doctor, a member of community, or a parent, et cetera. Sometimes you also are coming in or viewed as a, you know, as a representation of an organization. And this is something that, you know, especially working with a large research institution, that's something that we have to be aware of is how has our organization, you know, how some of those ties with the communities been strained just because of past work that we've done, and just have an appreciation for how that might color the initial conversations. And so I think really, and kind of overcoming that, it's really important to lead with your values and sometimes really not have an initial ask and just kind of open up dialogue from a place of humility and just trying to understand what they see are issues from their perspective. Again, really approaching this work from an asset-based approach, understanding that you're partnering with these organizations because they have expertise and knowledge that fundamentally that you don't possess, and you know that working with them will only amplify and be an asset for moving your work forward. Again, as we've mentioned, establishing mutual understanding, respect, trust, and bi-directional communication early on is of the utmost importance. So that and then also developing aligned vision, goals, and metrics for success or other important conversation points to create. I think it's important, you know, looking at these things is important to make sure that you're not that you're understanding power dynamics that may exist. I think, you know, coming from a larger institution, that's definitely something that we need to be aware of and kind of understand is how do we create an inclusive environment where everybody's knowledge, expertise, lived experiences is appreciated and kind of be as early on as possible. And then the final thing, as I'm running out of time and I want to give space for the next presenters, is really is about expectation setting. I think there's a sense sometimes that it's really knowing kind of what what skills and assets you can bring to the relationship and kind of being very true to that. I think sometimes there is an opportunity where you could potentially, drift from where your areas of expertise on, and you may encounter a situation of over promising and under delivering. And I think that's one of the major things that can really hinder a relationship and really cause damage to it. So I think expectation and understanding, walking into a situation, knowing what kind of knowledge, expertise you would like to share with them, and kind of where you're comfortable providing support or engagement. So I'm not going to go too much into the objectives for the breakout session because I want us to hop right into that. But suffice to say, I'm hoping that in these next three 35 plus minutes, you'll be able to listen to some organizations, hear a little bit about their mission and policy priorities within the 3 areas that we've outlined here: food security, school wellness policy, and nature park access. And then also identify ways that you as physicians and dentists and even local health departments can really engage and influence policy issues, both locally at the regional level and at the state level. And then finally, we want to leave you all with one, we hope that by the end of this, you'll have one action step that you'll be able to take with you to move forward some of the policy work. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I think we'll go ahead and move into the breakout session. So I'm going to open up the breakout rooms. If you did not register for a breakout room, let me know. And Mike, did you have a comment?
Kristen was one who proffered that idea, and did a great job of presenting it. So same point.
Wonderful. Any other comments, reflections that people had from the different sessions that they attended? Sylvia?
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
Hi, yes, I was in the food security group, and I think what Jared from Nourish, California was saying is that we all can pretty much at any level do something, whether start with educating our local elected officials or state, make a phone call, write a letter of support. We all can pretty much do something to support what we believe in, which is to help those that are they have the most need. So I think we can all think of something to do.
Great, thanks, Sylvia. Well, as we've reached the 115-minute mark, I wanted to, I know these conversations are just a starting point, and we're just hoping to broker some partnerships between fellows, local health departments, and some really fabulous organizations that are doing fantastic work in the area of food security, school wellness policy, and park and nature access. I really would like to also acknowledge, the partners and some of the leaders on these breakout sessions. So Jared Call from Nourish, California, Emma Steinberg, Siobhan from Alliance for Healthier Generation, and Luz Tristan from one of our Champion Rider Fellows. Also Krista from Alliance for a Healthier Generation, who's providing great support in organizing everything. Michaela from Children Nature Network, and then also Lori Bostic-Hammond. I really appreciate the additional effort that you all put into helping us organize this, and to my colleagues for helping to facilitate as well. And I am excited to kind of keep these conversations and partnerships going. So we'll make sure to get all the information from today's trainings, from today's webinar out to you all, as well as the individual breakout sessions. If you weren't able to attend one, but were interested in the content that they were reviewing, we'll make sure to get that information to you as well. So again, thank you all, and have a wonderful rest of your day. Take care.